Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for joining. Today, we wanted to discuss the life and times in brief anyway, of Raghunandan, Thakur, and Vamsidas, Babaji. So, two personalities whose disappearance day is on Thursday. So, Raghunandan for Thakur first. He was born into a family of physicians in 1511 AD. So, just around the time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Jagannath Puri. His father's name was Mukundas, and Mukundas was Narahari Sarkar Thakur's older brother. And Mukundas was physician to the king. He lived in the village of Srikand, West Bengal. Raghunandan Thakur took birth on Vasant Pachmi Day. His incarnation of one of Krishna's sakhas. Mukunda Das is an incarnation of Vrinda Devi, the goddess of Vrindavan forest. Very interesting. Narahari took a great deal of interest in raising his nephew, Raghunandan, for whom he had much affection. Externally, Mukund appeared to be engaged in government service as physician to the king, but in his inner life, he is filled with divine love. And who can know the extent of that love? After all, he is incarnation of Vrinda Devi. Once, when Mukundas was engaged in treating the king, he saw a peacock feather and he fainted. This is the intensity of the love that devotees have for the Lord. If they see something that reminds them of the Lord, they immediately go into some ecstasy or faint or something happens. Their hearts are very, very soft. From his early childhood, Raghunandan Thakur would feed the family's Gopinath deity, Ladus. So Mukundas lived with his household deity, Gopinath. One day he had to go somewhere for work. And he called Raghunandan, who was a small child at that time, to do the seva, to do the worship. The deity worship doesn't stop. Continue the service so the children can do it. He said to Raghunandan, in this house we worship Krishna, so I want you to be sure to give him something to eat. So he was an innocent boy. He accepted his father's words. And then Mukundas left. Raghunandan did as his father had ordered, made the offering to the deity. Raghunandan was just a child, and in his simplicity, he said to Gopinath, eat, eat. Krishna is controlled by love. And so he did as the child told him and ate everything on the plate without leaving a grain of rice. When Mukundas returned, he asked the boy to bring the prasad from the offering he had made. The child answered, Father, he ate everything. Gopinath left no remnants. Mukunda Das was so astonished at the child's wondrous words that he asked him to make another offering. This time, after he left the house, he returned and he hid to watch what his son did. So, there's Raghunandan there, there's Krishna eating, and there's Mukundas wondering what's going on. This is the deity of Lord of Gopinath, I believe still worshipped, holding the food in his hand. So Raghunandan placed a laddu in Krishna's hand and said in commanding words, eat, eat. When Krishna had eaten half of the laddu, Mukundas came into the doorway. Krishna saw Mukunda. and stopped eating. Mukunda observed that Krishna did not take another bite and that the half-eaten laddu remained in his hand. This caused him to be filled with love. He embraced his child and tears of joy rained from his eyes. To this day, fortunate people come to Shrikand to see the half-eaten laddu in Gopinath's hand. Raghunandan is not different from Cupid himself. So actually, very powerful personality. All the Mahants felt fascinated to see Gopinath deity whom Raghunandan had fed laddus. So this is from the Bhakta Ratnakar. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu once asked Mukunda, yes, who is the father? Is it you or is it Raghunandan? Raghunandan was the son. But Mukundas could understand what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asking. Certainly, he said, Raghunandan is my father. I am his son, for I have learned so much from him about bhakti. So it's the purity of the heart of Raghunandan was what attracted the Lord to eat the offering. When Raghunandan was 8 years old, his father took him to see Mahaprabhu in Nilachal, Jagannath Puri. As soon as Raghunandan bowed at Mahaprabhu's feet, this beautiful verse spontaneously flowed from his mouth. So he was only 8, huh? What does he know? But this verse came from his mouth. Oh my golden Gauranga, how sweet is your form, from which hundreds of streams of luster flow. Even Cupid feels jealous of your beauty, by which you easily steal the heart of anyone who sees you even once. Please bless me that the image of you in your dancing pose remains in my heart forever. What an amazing verse by an 8-year-old. Mahaprabhu and his divine associates were amazed and blessed him. By Mahaprabhu's order, Raghunandan served Gopinath till the end of his life. Due to his great devotion, at least 2 flowers bloomed every day on the Kadamba tree in his yard, even though Kadamba flowers only bloom in the rainy season. He would offer these special flowers to Gopinath. So this was an amazing boon he had from the Lord. Mahaprabhu, the father of Sankirtan, gave his adopted son, Raghunandan Thakur, the authority to offer the garland on the day before Sankirtan Yagya, the Adi Vash, and to make the final offering at the Yagya's end. Raghunandan accompanied the Bengali devotees to Puri every year during Chaturmasya. He would dance with his uncle Narahari at the Rath Yatra festival. He participated in the Keturi festival organized by Narottam Das Thakur at Gadadhar Das's festival in Katwa and at the commemorative festival for Narahari Sarkar Thakur in Srikant. Some people said anyone who is dear to Raghunandan will win Mahaprabhu's mercy life after life. So he should become dear to us. And that's why we're remembering him. Such a wonderful personality. Just by being close to Raghunandan, we'll become automatically close to Mahaprabhu. Others said Raghunandan is so merciful that he gives life to the most humble and fallen. Some said, what humility. There is no one who is equal. And others, he's as beautiful as Cupid himself. So again, this is from the Bhattanakar. Sri Raghunandan Thakur had great affection for Srinivas Acharya. So there was 3 Acharyas, Srinivas Acharya, Narottam Das Thakur, and Shyamanandan. They were the 3 who together did so much seva. So Raghunandan was particularly close to Srinivas Acharya. Prior to his disappearance, he consoled Srinivas Acharya that despite the difficulties, he would be able to spread Vaishnavism in the future. Raghunandan bequested the service of his Gaur Gopal deity to his son, Kanai Thakur, and then left the world on the 4th day of the waxing moon, Shukla Chaturthi, in the month of Shravan. Kanai Thakur gave a feast as part of his father's last rites. Raghunandan slowly became hidden to mortal eyes while repeating the name of Sri Krishna Chaitanya again and again. How glorious is that day of Shravan Shukla Chaturthi. So this is Gopinath. And is this? Yeah, must be Gopinath. Mm-hmm. Here's a Laddu Gopal with the Laddu in his hand. So this is a Shrikant. Raghunandan Thakur ki jai. Anybody else like to share any pastime that they may have come across? Or any questions or any comments? Okay. Raghunandan ki jai. Let's have a look at the next one. So next we wanted to Vamsidas Babaji, very interesting personality. In more recent times, there are two types of exalted devotees of Krishna. So the Bhajanandi is completely immersed in intense meditation of the Lord, principally by chanting and remembering the glories and pastimes. And then there's the Gosthiyanandi. It's primarily involved in spreading the name of the Lord by extensive preaching. Of course, the boundaries are not rigid. For the Bhajanandi, may also sometimes preach, and the Gosthiyanandi also relish bhajans and kirtans. But depending on the moods, they generally make one or the other as their primary seva. So our Prabhupada, most of our Guru Parampara, our preachers, they like to introduce Krishna consciousness to others. But there are some, like in recent history again, Go Kishore Das Babaji, Jagannath Das Babaji, they were Babajis. They would simply preach, they would simply chant and do bhajan. Of the two, both are important. But some would argue that the Gosthiyanandi is more important because he's giving Krishna to others. But of course, Krishna won't see the difference between the two. They're both dear to Krishna. Vamsidas Babaji was a Bhajanandi. He was completely aloof from the material world, totally preoccupied with worshipping his deities. He performed his bhajan and visited holy places. These were the 4 things he would do. He had no care for this material world, simply engaging in worshipping his deities and doing his bhajans at holy places. So this was at the time of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. The true position of Vamsidas Babaji was revealed by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the founder of the Gaudiya Math and the initiating spiritual master of Prabhupada. Even though Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, in the mood of Gosthiyanandi, had made preaching his primary service, as an exalted devotee, he could perceive the greatness of Vamsidas. This mutual affection and respect between the two Paramahamsas formed the basis of a very sweet and loving relationship. Vamsidas Babaji had reached the highest level of spontaneous devotion, seldom bothered with the rules and regulations of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So one who is at that level, he doesn't have to worry about the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. Not that he flouts the rules and regulations, but they don't bother him anymore. They don't get in the way of his bhajan or his Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Some people can stick to the rules and regulations and forget the purpose of the sadhana and more focus on the rules and regulations, which is also important. But over focus on rules and regulations and missing the whole point is not good as well. For instance, he did not chant on beats. He did not need any beats because he was always chanting. He did not, but then some people would make that excuse, hey, yeah, I was chanting throughout the day, Hare Krishna, Hare. And maybe they are while they're doing the housework, etc., etc. But we shouldn't assume that just because I'm doing that, I don't need to do anything else. Unless one is at that platform, at that level. And there's very few who are. So he did not chant on beats. He did not follow any fixed schedule of worship. He did not chant any mantras or prayers for worshipping. His brief interactions with the outside world often left people confused and bewildered. Just like the Brijbasis, it's like Prabhupada said that, don't try to understand the Brijbasis. They're on a different level. They're Krishna's family. Don't try to understand, just serve them. So in the same way, this Vamsidas Babaji was such an elevated soul. He didn't necessarily follow any rules and regulations. So you can confuse somebody, especially if they're trying to analyze the person's behavior. But the idea is not to understand. A pure devotee is just to be served, not to be understood. Vamsidas was born as Bhairab Chandra in the year 1859 in the village of Majidpur in current Bangladesh. He is the oldest of 7 children of Sanatan Mala Brahma and Srimati Sarva Sundari. From a young age, he relished the association of Narottam Das Babaji. That's not the same Narottam Das Thakur that we have in our line. This Narottam Das Babaji was a devotee who stayed at the temple near where he lived. From him, Vamsidas learned many bhajans of Narottam Das Thakur and developed a great attraction for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. His parents, worried by his growing attraction to spirituality, married him. However, Vamsidas left his wife when his son was 10 years old, became a renunciate. He took initiation from Narottam Das Babaji, and who gave him the name Vamsidas. Even though Vamsidas had lived a hard life as a youth, as a Babaji, he became extremely austere. So how austere was he? He was always dressed in one simple loincloth, nothing more. He rarely attempted to procure any food and would often go without eating, sometimes for several days. It was common for him to abstain from food and water for a day or two. He took very little care of his health. He would bathe in freezing water even when he was sick. Whew, that's pretty austere. Despite all this, Vamsidas looked vibrant and healthy. He was over 6 feet tall and was constantly traveling. Even at the age of 80, he walked so fast that many of his younger associates could not keep up with him. Much of the Goswamis of Vrindavan survived solely on spiritual energy. He was one of them, just surviving on spiritual energy. Even amongst the Babajis, Vamsidas is unique. He was on the Avadut platform. That is, he was completely beyond any rules and regulations. His hair and beard were uncut and matted. He rarely took a bath. That's really unusual. But as we say, he doesn't have to follow any rules and regulations. He's completely fixed in his bhajan. He wore nothing more than a loincloth. His eyes looked wild and his behavior intimidating. He often spoke in an unintelligible manner. Even though he knew the local Bengali dialect, he sometimes spoke in his native Mihemensing dialect, which very few people could understand. His sentences would run together and he would randomly jump from one topic to another without any seeming connection. Sometimes he spoke about the pastime of Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sometimes he would animatedly talk, and at other times he would remain silent, not even bothering to acknowledge others. So he was real avaduta, could never understand what to expect. Despite his seemingly disorganized life, Vamsidas had a keen sense of discrimination when it came to people. He not only shunned the companies of non-devotees, also avoided the pseudo Vaishnavas who would often flock by his side to bask in his glory. He rigidly abided by the principles of adopting that which is favorable to Krishna and rejecting everything else. With a keen intuition, he was able to discern the hidden motives of people coming to him for guidance or blessings and would appropriately respond to them. A bit like Jagannath Das Babaji and Gokishore Das Babaji. Even though Vamsidas would appear to talk like a madman, he never said anything inconsistent with the conclusions of the scriptures. Though he often spoke enigmatically, he was always in agreement with the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. Vamsidas had 3 sets of deities that he carried along with him. He had small Bal Gopal, Krishna in the form of a child, that he was extremely attached to. He also had 6-inch metal deities of Radha Govinda and larger 3-foot wooden deities of Gaunitai. He always carried his deities with him, would continuously talk to them. His mood of worship was that of an affectionate parent. He would talk to Gopal lovingly, sometimes angrily, sometimes pleadingly. He rarely spoke to anyone but his deities. In his unending conversation with the deities, he would often stop as if to listen and continue talking. Even if people would come to ask him questions, he would reply to the deities, referring to himself in the third persons as Vamsidas. So there were many pastimes. I don't know if I've got them here, but one time I think a thief came and stole the jewelry or something of his deities. And Vamsidas got angry at the deities. Said, why did you inspire them to do that? So he had a really unusual relationship with the Lordship. When Vamsidas was visiting Puri during Rath Yatra, the cart stopped close to where he was standing. Despite the efforts of everyone assembled, this cart would not move. Then Vamsidas came, and after some intimate conversation with the Lord, the cart moved on with ease. Once Vamsidas went to the sea in Puri to give Bal Gopal a bath. Arriving on the shore, he beckoned the sea, come here, come here. Huge waves crossed over the beach, and Vamsidas was able to bathe his deities. While crossing the river Mahanindi, Vamsidas instructed the boatman to drop him near a point where he claimed was a snake. When the boatman dropped Vamsidas and his associates at the point, a yellow snake appeared, holding his Bal Gopal deity. Vamsidas exclaimed, "See, Anantadev has come." After some time, the snake went away. This is the power of the pure devotee. He can see the Lordship, see the mercy flowing, and he can avert any danger. Okay. Once on a full moon night of Ashwini, Vamsidas instructed his associates not to set up any tent, but camped out in the open. At this time, 50 attractive women dressed in white came and offered obeisances to Vamsidas and left without saying anything. Despite the late hour, they were unescorted, something that never happens in rural India. And none of the locals had any knowledge of them. The devotees concluded that they were demigoddesses who had come to get the blessings of Vamsidas on that auspicious day. One day, Vamsidas cooked sweet rice for Bal Gopal, but before offering it, he angrily threw it away, accusing Gopal of having already eaten rice gur, so sweet rice with semi-processed sugar extracted from palm tree, in the Radha Govind temple in Vrindavan. One of the persons who happened to hear this sent a letter to temple priest inquiring about the offering of to Radha Govind on that particular date and time. A reply soon came that the offering on the day was sweet rice cooked with palm tree gur. Once a man suffering from cholera, considered fatal in those days. It was a bit like the coronavirus here. Very deadly, but even more deadly. Cholera outbreak was really bad. So this man lay outside the hut of Vamsidas, expecting him to cure him. For 3 days he lay there moaning with intense pain, without eating, drinking anything. Finally, Vamsidas came outside and placed a tulsi leaf on his tongue. The man was instantly cured and he got up and went home. When Vamsidas became too old and infirm, he would have trouble going out to do madhukari, begging food from devotees. So this is a practice that is often conducted in Vrindavan, in Babaji, where the people, the sages, would just go to a house and whatever they are given, they would eat from the bijbasis. Once in such a situation, he exclaimed to his servant, "Did you hear what Gauranga was saying? He has told Vamsidas, you should not go begging for 3 days. Now you're too old, so I will feed you." This Gauranga wants to feed me. Saying this, Vamsidas fetched a stick and waved it, threatening at his Gaura deity. "You do not have to go outside for serving me. If you go outside, I will break your legs." So what a relationship between the devotee and the Lord. The devotee is threatening the Lord. "I'll break your legs if you try to serve me." Amazing. 17th March 1944, Vamsidas returned to his hometown of Majidpur. He did not actually enter the town, as it is traditional for renunciates not to return to their former family. He lived there for some time, and finally on Chaturthi, 23rd July 1944, Vamsidas concluded his earthly pastimes and resumed his service to Krishna in Golok. So this is his birthplace, the Bhajan Kutir, Vamsidas, in Navadvip, Koldvip. This is his Bhajan Kutir. Must be his deities as well here. Never been there. I also know that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had a great deal of regard for Vamsidas. He would ask his disciples to go and give him things. And Vamsidas generally did not accept anything from anyone. But from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he would accept. They regarded each other as very close, even though they were opposite ends of the devotion spectrum. One was a Bhajanandi and one was a Gostyanandi. Okay, Vamsidas Goswami ki jai, Babaji ki jai. Any comments, any questions? Anything you've read which you would like to share? Okay. Jai.